Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new news roundup video, and today, as usual, quite a bit to discuss. We've had a new Warner Brothers shareholder call and letter released, which, in the true Warner Brothers DC fashion, offers some cool new tidbits, but also a wave of confusion that has hit many fans, wondering if a few aspects of the news that come out of this letter and meeting, if you will, mean this, or does it kind of mean that? We also have some other general updates with, a pretty interesting one with the Batman 2, some Superman sequel stuff, and more. So if you're brand new here, you like DC, you want more news updates like this, other content on the DCU and all kinds of things, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. But let's start off with the actual Warner Brothers updates here on the future of DC. So skipping to the part of the letter that was arguably the most interesting. So after talking about Superman, how it's made $220 million globally, the strongest DC studios opening since 2022, they then say, in film, James Gunn is busy preparing the next installments of the DC superfamily, including Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Clayface, and the next Wonder Woman. In addition, the Batman 2 2027 is preparing to begin shooting next spring, among several other projects in development. The 10-year vision for the DC Universe also includes an exciting array of television projects, including The Penguin, which recently garnered 24 Emmy nominations and was watched by nearly 20 million HBO Max subscribers, the upcoming new season of Peacemaker, and the debut of Lanterns in 2026. In a precise and measured way, the DC franchise will increasingly overlay across the studio's broader efforts, from film and TV to consumer products, games, experiences, and social. So a lot of people have been getting confused by the quote about James Gunn preparing the next installment in the superfamily, and rightfully so, by the way. So again, the official Warner Brothers Discovery letter states, in film, James Gunn is busy preparing the next installments of the DC superfamily, including Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Clayface, and the next Wonder Woman. So when you read that, that's kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's fairly obviously, meaning that Gunn is preparing the next installment of DC movies collectively, and they just kind of branded those projects in this letter as they were describing it as being a part of this DC superfamily, rather than implying anything else, because, they literally listed 3 projects after that, which are overall a part of the DC Studios superfamily, right? But the thing is, when you actually listen to the shareholder call itself, you can hear David Zaslav, and he literally says, word for word here, and we're thrilled to share that James Gunn is already writing and preparing to direct the next installment within the superfamily, which is clearly worded a bit differently to the official Warner Brothers letter, and it could imply various things. So that's where everyone got the understanding of, oh, damn, Zaslav kind of just gave away that the project James Gunn is writing and directing next, that he's been, a bit ambiguous about, but has stated that Superman is a major character of. Well, it could very well be some kind of Superman and Supergirl team-up thing. So yes, I completely get how this is confusing. So, how do we actually look at it? Well, I would still say, despite what some other people may say, that the waters are still a bit murky. However, we did also have James Gunn reply to a fan on Threads right after this letter came out, with them saying, is it true you're preparing for the next installment within the superfamily? And Gunn replied, I am actually past preparing and well into writing. But hey, think about it. Is that him actually confirming his movie that he's writing is a part of the superfamily, as in Superman and Supergirl? Again, we already know he's acknowledged that Superman is in it and a major role, or is it more within the framing of the Warner Brothers Discovery letter, using that phrase more of a way to talk about the bunch of, movies that are being worked on that are coming our way, such as, Supergirl, Clayface, Wonder Woman that was fast-tracked. But I will say it also wouldn't surprise me if it does actually turn out to be a movie that consists of Superman teaming up with Supergirl, especially after she would have already have gone through her Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow arc in the Supergirl film. That would have grown her as a character quite a bit more to kind of get us to that point of Gunn's sequel, sort of sequel to Superman, if you will, in where they team up together. And I think it'd be a pretty badass movie, obviously. basically. And the villain that would also warrant both Kryptonians teaming up would have to be a pretty damn powerful one. So, man, I just hope that that villain is somewhere on the levels of Brainiac or something like that. But again, if you want to get down to the super specifics, nothing confirmed, but I do lean more towards the side of his sequel being literally super family related. So I'd love to hear your take on that. But another key thing to point out with what was said in the letter was that the Batman 2 is preparing to begin shooting next spring. So first of all, if you've been watching me follow this very closely in previous news videos and Batman videos in general, that makes complete sense to me, as we've always discussed on the channel how we've been expecting the Batman Part 2 in 2026 for the filming to be around spring. Like, we've talked about how it could be March, April. Now, obviously, spring, like Warner Brothers Discovery officially confirming here spring, is not a firm date, because one could argue, you know, it's March or April, because that's still spring. Hell, you could even say May, but like I would say it's more likely going to be around March regardless. But also for a couple of days now, we've had a report from productionlist.com, I believe, that a lot of news outlet social media pages were reposting, saying that the Batman 2 is officially in pre-production. And when I first saw that, I was a bit hesitant to talk about it. Some of you may have noticed because I haven't talked about it on the channel so far. And that's because even though, for me, pre-production has been expected to lift off like pretty much any day or week now, or freaking minute now, the only thing about production listing sites like this is that they can be hit or miss, or just kind of report things honestly, but based on tentative dates that aren't always set in stone. So here's an example for you guys. Like, the very report that got everyone to say that the Batman Part 2 is officially, keyword being official there, officially in pre-production, it's the same report that stated in its own headline that it's also confirmed to be shooting in January. Well, that's clearly not true, because what is officially confirmed out of this brand new Warner Brothers Discovery letter yesterday talking about DC's future is that it's officially filming in spring, which, you know, again, begins in March, so definitely not January. So you can see why I was hesitant to be like, oh yeah, it's officially in pre-production. Confirmed, confirmed, confirmed. And again, I say that while also bearing in mind that I ironically expect it to enter pre-production very soon. And yes, kind of, if not already. So this may seem like a futile discussion at the same time if I'm saying, well, if not already. Why do I say if not already? Well, that's because despite me pointing out that inaccurate report, it kind of could be. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still hold a tiny amount of reservation, because the last update that we had in the grand scheme of things wasn't really that long ago, by the way. And it was in an interview with Josh Horowitz where Gunn said that he really likes the script and everything good like that, but there's still a couple of things that they need to figure out still. And I also feel that Gunn would have said officially over on Threads or something like that, that yes, the script is officially greenlit. As of right now, the Batman 2, I'm thrilled to say, is officially now in pre-production. Not that he has to, and just because he hasn't, it doesn't mean that it hasn't gone into pre-production, but he's done this before with other projects that were at that stage of heading into the pre-production phase due to their scripts being approved and greenlit. And what did we only hear, like, as of a week or two ago, that there was still some things that needed to be figured out. So you would have thought if this was all true, he would have kind of said something. But having said that, what I will say is also seeing Mattson Tomlin post this, and he's the co-writer of the Batman Part 2, just in case you didn't know, post this gif of Batman over on Twitter with a smiling face emoji. Well, that was also a very encouraging sign that we actually might have liftoff for pre-production. So all in all, guys, the way I see it is that since we know the Batman Part 2 is filming in spring officially, if it hasn't started pre-production already, it will be in the sense of any minute right now kind of thing. And another reason why I was reserved about the report from a few days ago is because the first movie had a pre-production window of 6 months, and then it started shooting. So to give you an idea, let's just say Part 2 starts filming when spring first starts, which is March, and if it were in pre-production right now, that's way longer than the first movie. I mean, we have the whole rest of August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. That's around 8 months of pre-production. So all while I was thinking at the time is that, oh, well, yeah, it's going to enter pre-production any minute, but it also technically doesn't have to for a little bit yet. But hey, maybe they're just going to enjoy the extra wiggle room of pre-production time if Gunn, behind the scenes, since that interview with Josh Horowitz, has, I guess you could say, figured those couple of things out and has, behind the scenes, greenlit the script for pre-production. But I still find it a bit odd that he hasn't officially said that. But hey, maybe he just didn't want to do that this time. But long story short, this should mean that we should hear about casting calls, whether that's from major trades or, to be honest, more likely scoopers fairly soon. So make sure you are subscribed for those news updates because they will be coming very shortly. I mean, in a few minutes after the other Batman update we've got to, or confusion thing we're about to get into, there's another big rumor to do with Robin, which is fairly fresh that we need to talk about. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Batman news with regards to the letter isn't over yet, as we need to kind of dive back into that confusion territory. And this surrounds the wording, once again in the letter, that has led various news outlets on social media pages making posts like this. Zaslav says that the Penguin and the Batman Part 2 are a part of Gunn's 10-year plan for the DC Universe, which has, as many of you can understand, kind of reads like to a lot of people out there, maybe you watching right now, oh my god, Zaslav basically just said that the Batman Part 2 and the Penguin are a part of the DCU. He said DC Universe, after all. But regardless of whatever happens in the future, what posts like this are really sourcing it from is the Warner Brothers Discovery letter, where it literally states, in addition, the Batman 2 is preparing to begin shooting next spring, among several other projects in development. The 10-year vision for the DC Universe also includes an exciting array of television projects, including The Penguin, which recently, yada yada yada, garnered, the Emmy nominations, and it goes on to mention some other projects that are DCU, like Peacemaker. And so, I mean, I get how some people may want to read into that. I really do. But the way I see it is that's just simply stating that, yeah, as we know, James Gunn and Peter Safran have a 10-year plan as co-CEOs of DC Studios at DC, which, as we know, consists of both mainline DCU canon projects and Elseworlds projects for their DC universe. So all in all there, I'm just kind of left thinking, do we really need to get into the semantics of this with regards to the DC Universe films both contain DCU canon movies and DC Universe Elseworld movies? Like, really? Really? Do we really need to play that game? And to be totally fair here, you guys know that I've said more and more over the past several months that you actually never know when it comes to the future with regards to the DCU and Matt Reeves' Batman merge, especially with what I covered in a recent video with Gunn saying that latest quote of "that's not what's happening right now," and how things are still in flux. So I fully admit that crazier things have happened, and things could change behind the scenes due to personal circumstances and whatnot that ultimately led to this destination that people have been speculating about for years. But no, I don't think that grouping in the Batman as a part of the plans in the Warner Brothers Discovery letter with the DC Universe, which includes both mainline DCU canon and Elseworld stuff, is really something to read into. As Gunn says, right now, that is. Now, on that note, we have that new rumor about the Batman 2 that came up very recently, I believe last night, and this is to be taken with a grain of salt as it comes from the reporter Jeff Snyder. Now, as usual, to be completely fair here with what I say about Jeff, he has had scoops pan out before, so I think that is, fair and important to say, as he is a reporter, and he does have sources that have panned out. But also, plenty haven't panned out. So, like Pattinson being in the Penguin to whatever else. So just do take that into account, please. Because this is, once again, one of those headlines that's going around where it's being said that the Robin will reportedly be in the Batman Part 2. And people only kind of read that part and don't really click on where the source came from. Is this, reportedly from a major trade like Deadline? But, people don't look that far into it. So, don't believe everything you read. However, you never know. You never know. So what's interesting about what Jeff Snyder says here in the newsletter, and it reads as follows. I sat down with a well-placed source this week and asked about the Batman sequel, and this person told me that the script was worth the wait. They described it as a big swing for director Matt Reeves and his co-writer Mattson Tomlin, and said that the duo is really going for it with the uncompromising sequel, which is expected to be just as dark as its 2022 predecessor, which grossed $772 million worldwide. They also mentioned that the character of Robin is part of the script, which should pique the interest of agents across Hollywood. I didn't press for too many more details, but it sounded like everyone at DC Studios is extremely pleased with the direction Reeves is going with the Batman Part 2, now that the script has been turned in. So now, typically here, people are already using this as, Reeves's entryway to the DCU Pattinson merge. And, I kind of do get that as a theory because, we've talked about Robin a lot on the channel, how it may not be likely that that's happening in this universe, although there are ways that, Reeves could do it. And I've always said, if Reeves does do it, I would automatically be obsessed because I'd be so curious as to how he would make that work in his world. Like, it's not the same as, like, the DCU Batman, in a fantastical world where you really suspend your disbelief, like the comics where he literally takes on a kid as a Robin, right? And I've always said, in the DCU Batman, I fully expect James Gunn to attempt to do like a hit girl kick-ass thing where they actually do that, like a kid Damian Wayne ninja assassin, and they just lean into it unapologetically. But in Matt Reeves' world and that tone and that lens, if you were to get a 12, 13-year-old, if Pattinson's Bruce was to really do that, like watch scenes of the movie again and you really imagine that, it is a bit like, would he really do that? However, if you were to age up Robin, I know some people don't like that, but in this kind of universe, that would be a bit more believable. For example, if Reeves were to do it, I think they would make him 17, like maybe 18, played by like a 20-something-year-old actor who can, in typical TV shows or movies, really, they're not really 17, they're more in their early 20s or something. But having said that, again, it would be around that ballpark. I don't think they would do what Nolan did, which, again, I understand why Nolan did it, with the kind of Joseph Gordon-Levitt age, because in that universe, to actually kind of weaponize a kid, like a 12-year-old, it just, even a 14, 15-year-old, it wouldn't, it just does, what I'm saying, but we don't need to go to Joseph Gordon-Levitt ages. So another example here is, I know Dacre Montgomery, who played Billy in Stranger Things, is 30 now, but this is just an example of kind of what I mean. He played a high schooler in Stranger Things years ago now. He kind of looks older, kind of pulls off the younger vibe back then. And again, this was quite a few years ago, obviously. So just something like that, as opposed to the Joseph Gordon-Levitt vibe, and where I can imagine that would be interesting to see Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne. Even though Alfred might be like, I don't know what you're doing, man. Maybe he sees himself in like a disgruntled kind of 17, 18-year-old, and he tries to do something with that. But hey, like, maybe I'm wrong. Like, how crazy would it be if it was a kid? I don't know about that. And hey, I don't even know if this is a thing in the first place, as it is a rumor. But it'd be pretty crazy if Jeff Snyder got this scoop correct. I mean, we've heard about Robin scoops in the Batman and the Batman 2 for like years now. Seriously, I've been here, done that before. There's probably, if you type in my name with Robin and the Batman, it will pop up quite a few times. So this is just the latest iteration of another Robin rumor. But given that the script, has been handed in, Gunn's read it, it's likely going into pre-production soon if it hasn't done so already. Stuff like this could be getting out. And as I said, things like this will be getting out in the next couple of months or so anyway. Now, do I think this is going to be like this secret behind-the-scenes entry point for the DCU Pattinson merge? It's just impossible to answer that question. For the longest time, it's been insisted by Gunn himself that it's not happening, but recently we had a quote from Gunn, which I fully agree leaves the door open. We also speculated about this in a recent video, that at the end of the day, we came to learn of personal things behind the scenes with Matt Reeves. We speculated quite a bit, could this interrupt with the Batman 2, but it didn't, because it turns out he is going forward with the Batman 2. He is directing it himself. But, you could still argue, what if, again, full-on speculation here, he does that, awesome, but he kind of takes a step back after part 2, and that's where they've come to like a compromise of, okay, let's actually use Pattinson in the DCU, and despite things for the longest time, for years and years, being maintained by Gunn and Reeves himself, that it is separate, for one thing or another behind the scenes, again, crazy things have happened. But again, this is like you can go on exhaustively about this forever with its speculation. I've also thought for the longest time anyway, I'm seeing a lot of people being like, oh, but wouldn't two Robins be a problem? If we have the Brave and the Bold Bat family and, a Robin in Matt Reeves' universe and it still remains separate. Maybe, but maybe not. Like, not really. I would say, you still have a Batman movie in 2027. If the Brave and the Bold is indeed separate, that's still coming out quite after 2027. So if you can hack having a Batman and another Batman in the mainline DCU, I'm sure, again, in of itself, people are understanding that those tones and movies are completely different. So having a different type of Robin compared to a hit girl type young Damian Wayne kid Robin, that's different enough in my mind. So I don't think, having a Robin in Reeves' Batman Part 2, if we assume Jeff Snyder's report is true, is a problem for the Brave and the Bold is going to have a Robin or two in it or something like that. I don't really think that factors in, although I have said for quite a while that I did assume that the meeting that Reeves had with James Gunn back in 2023, that they self-described as air traffic control with their Batman ideas so they don't crash into each other. I always assumed that, well, if you're going to do a Bat family in the DCU, maybe just leave it to the DCU and don't do it in your epic crime saga universe. And that might have been fine the way I've always understood it, because Matt Reeves might not want to do a Robin anyway, because it's harder to tackle with, suspending your disbelief with actually taking a kid on as Robin. But there are ways around that, as we've already discussed. So, I leave that open to you guys, ultimately. We still have to wait to see how things pan out in the long run, or wait for another update from Gunn, and where he does literally and explicitly say, I've already said, for crying out loud, it's not happening. I know I said that quote the way I did, but people are reading too into that. Just to really stress again, no, separate DCU, new actor. It's going to be a new actor. Until that happens, I will admit the door's been left ajar. But, let me know what you think about the Robin rumor. Let me know what you think. I know some of you will say, a 12-year-old Robin would work. I respectfully disagree with that, with the tone of the first movie and what Matt Reeves has gone for. But, again, like a Stranger Things Billy-looking aged person in the movie who's playing a 16 to 18-year-old, that's something I could buy, with Bruce thinking he's helping out the kid, but also bringing him into his crusade as the Dark Knight. That would be psychologically interesting to explore. And I also think Matt Reeves would actually be like, hey, how can I make that work here? Maybe there is a way in. And I do think that would be with a slightly older teen Robin, like 18, 19, as I keep saying, somewhere around there. Now, some other little news updates that we've got out of DC is we have a Nexus Point news exclusive saying Max Minghella is being eyed to join the cast of DC Studios' Clayface. They said, as reported by Nexus Point News, the third protagonist of the film is John, a detective and fiancé to Caitlin Bates, who's suspicious of his fiancé's relationship to Matt Hagen. And as we've covered before, she's going to try and, help Matt Hagen out, maybe help cure him. But, things clearly get a bit messy here. Now, I really like him in Handmaid's Tale. I think he's a really good actor. So I can easily imagine him being a detective. Now, I don't know if that will be in Gotham or somewhere like Hollywood, depending on where Clayface is going to be for a period of the film, because, in the comics, he does go to Hollywood and he gets dragged back to Gotham by Batman. And I think it has actually already been said, it's not fresh from the top of my head, that a part of the movie will be taking place there. But obviously, we will be in Gotham as well. So if you've seen Handmaid's Tale, you've seen Max Minghella's, I probably butchered that name, if you've seen his work before, would you like him to be a part of the cast? Personally, I'm really happy with that. Other than that, Superman box office right now, it'll probably update when I post this video. We're looking at a worldwide box office of 562 million. A lot of the box office reporters are really confident that it's definitely going to surpass 600 million, and people are predicting that it's going to be around a 630, 640 to 680 million global box office run, which would be really funny, because I know I keep saying this, but my prediction that I've always thought I was lowballing before Superman came out was 680 million. 700 would be great, but I was always like, I don't know, 680. So it would be kind of wild if it did land on 680. I think that really does depend on how long they keep it in the theaters. Like, there was rumors going around that it was going to go on premium video on demand sometime in the next few weeks, but then that got debunked. So, you know, if they keep it in the box office, and again, like, it made 2.4 million on Tuesday, it's now tracking to make 8.5 to 9 million on its 5th weekend. If you just keep that in week after week, it will get to like 610, 620 mil. And it's already looking at 590-ish million globally this Sunday. So yeah, maybe it will. Maybe it will get past 650. But I would love to know what, you know, global box office run total you think things are going to get to. But I'm going to shut up now. There are other little bits of news that I want to talk about out there, but I think for today, that is enough to be getting on with and discussing in that comment section. So make sure you do. I would really love to hear your opinions. If you have made it this far, you guys know what I'm going to say. I'd greatly appreciate the support of you leaving a like rating. Just helps with the algorithm, helps support the videos that I make. It helps motivate me in making these videos. And obviously, you know, if you're liking what you're seeing here, consider subscribing. I'm sure you will enjoy the future content. Don't forget to check out my Lanterns video that I posted. But until next time, I am gonna love you and leave you. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.